Welcome to Secrets of History at Night, your nightly journey into the past, designed to guide you into peaceful slumber. Before we begin, please consider subscribing and liking this video. By the end of our discussion, you'll be fast asleep. Close your eyes as our story is about to unfold. Today, we venture to a place where time appears to have stood still, where the echoing silence has replaced the murmur of footsteps, and where homes hold lingering mysteries of the lives once lived within their walls. These are the spectral cities, a truly remarkable facet of human history. Typically, settlements emerge, flourish, expand, and thrive for centuries, sometimes even millennia. They witness generations, epochs, and shifts in culture and civilization. Yet, occasionally, the opposite occurs. A town or city abruptly halts its progression, frozen in time, becoming a decaying monument to its former glory. The reasons for such sudden abandonment vary widely. Some instances are precipitated by natural or man-made calamities that render habitation impossible. Other times, conflict or economic decline forces residents to seek new beginnings elsewhere, stripping away the incentive to remain. However, in certain cases, the departure of inhabitants is so abrupt and enigmatic that even contemporary historians and archaeologists struggle to provide definitive explanations. These deserted settlements seem preserved, as if captured in a temporal amber. Often, within these quiet enclaves, one can still find homes with furnishings intact, children's toys left where they were hastily dropped, open books, and clocks that have ceased their ticking. They serve as invaluable resources for historians and researchers, offering glimpses into the daily lives of ordinary individuals across different historical periods. Through these phantom towns, we can directly observe the repercussions of broad historical trends and specific localized events that dramatically altered the destinies of thousands. Furthermore, these abandoned urban areas transform into unique laboratories for scientists studying how nature gradually reclaims territories once shaped by human hands. Many of these locations today are almost entirely enveloped by forests, deserts, or the sea. This fascinating process of cities being absorbed back into the natural landscape is studied as a distinct scientific discipline. In our exploration today, we will encounter several iconic phantom cities, each distinct in its origin and narrative. We will delve into the actual events and the underlying causes that led to the permanent cessation of life in these places. By examining their fates, we aim to understand why, even after the passage of many years, these desolate locales continue to captivate our attention and curiosity. We've already touched upon the diverse reasons cities become depopulated. However, sometimes, the fate of an entire urban center is sealed not by a grand catastrophe or widespread conflict, but by a single, seemingly minor oversight whose consequences ripple for decades. This was precisely the case for Centralia, a town nestled in the northeastern region of America, within the state of Pennsylvania. Today, this small community is largely deserted, effectively erased from official records. Its unique demise stems from an underground fire that ignited over 60 years ago and shows no sign of extinguishing, potentially burning for another century. Centralia was established in the mid-19th century, and its destiny was intrinsically linked to coal mining from its inception. Like many American mining towns of that era, it experienced rapid growth and prosperity, fueled by the extraction of abundant anthracite, a high-quality, hard coal. By the mid-20th century, Centralia's population had swelled to nearly 2,000 residents. The town presented a typical American mining community profile, with modest homes, schools, shops, and businesses catering to the needs of the miners and their families. However, everything changed quite unexpectedly. In the spring of 1962, municipal officials decided to clear the town's landfill, situated on the outskirts. The standard procedure for such cleanups involved burning the refuse. This particular instance, however, deviated drastically from the norm. The fire set to clear the landfill breached a hidden mine shaft, penetrating deep underground and igniting extensive coal seams. Initially, the residents underestimated the severity of the situation, perceiving the blaze as a minor incident. Yet, coal burning deep beneath the surface creates unique conditions. When it smolders slowly underground, it can maintain temperatures in the hundreds of degrees Celsius, drawing oxygen through an intricate network of tunnels and passages. Numerous attempts were made to extinguish the fire. Mines were flooded with water, filled with sand and specialized chemical agents. Boreholes were drilled, and efforts were made to cut off the oxygen supply to the burning strata. All these efforts proved futile. The subterranean network of mines beneath Centralia spans tens of kilometers, allowing the fire to quickly discover new avenues for propagation. Moreover, the anthracite itself possesses superior burning qualities, combusting for extended periods with remarkable stability, further complicating containment efforts. The initial significant repercussions of the underground fire began to manifest a few years after its inception. In 1979, the proprietor of a Centralia gas station was compelled to close his business as the gasoline storage tanks became dangerously overheated, posing a genuine explosion risk. Then, in 1981, one of the most widely reported and terrifying incidents occurred, serving as a critical distress signal. A 12-year-old boy, Todd Domboski, fell into a colossal chasm that suddenly opened beneath his feet in his own backyard. The pit descended approximately 40 meters, revealing a scorching abyss filled with toxic fumes and intense heat emanating from the subterranean blaze. Fortunately, the child was promptly rescued by his brother, alerted by his cries for help. This harrowing event shocked the community and provided compelling evidence of the peril posed by the underground inferno. With each passing year, the situation deteriorated. Residents began to observe increasingly alarming phenomena. The asphalt on the streets cracked and collapsed. The ground beneath their feet grew warm, and thick, acrid smoke began to emanate from fissures in the earth. Individuals reported experiencing headaches, dizziness, and general malaise, attributed to the poisonous gases, including carbon monoxide and sulfur dioxide. Instances arose where families had to evacuate their homes urgently due to excessively high concentrations of hazardous substances, and some inhabitants were hospitalized with severe poisoning. It soon became evident that the concentration of toxic substances had surpassed all safety thresholds, posing a direct threat to the lives of the townspeople. In the early 80s, authorities officially designated Centralia as a hazardous zone and mandated the complete evacuation of its population. The United States government allocated funds to facilitate the relocation of residents to other towns. While the majority of the townspeople gradually vacated their homes, a few resolutely refused to leave. They either dismissed the gravity of the situation or harbored an exceptionally strong attachment to their ancestral community. Nevertheless, by the close of the 20th century, only a few dozen individuals remained in Centralia, and subsequently, their numbers dwindled to a mere handful. Centralia stands as a stark testament to how easily the delicate equilibrium between humanity and nature can be disrupted. This event prompted scientists to reevaluate safety protocols within the mining industry and devise new, protective measures against similar occurrences. Concurrently, the town has become a focal point for tourists, journalists, and researchers, drawn to witness firsthand how a once vibrant community devolved into a desolate expanse consumed by subterranean flames. Presently, Centralia is almost entirely deserted, embodying the quintessential image of an American ghost town. The former roadways are now barely discernible, obscured by the encroaching embrace of trees and undergrowth. Thin tendrils of gray, caustic smoke continue to rise from fissures in the earth and asphalt, crafting a surreal panorama. The ground in many areas is warm to the touch, with temperatures exceeding 60 degrees Celsius. This indicates that the underground fire persists and continues to spread, undeterred by any containment efforts. Despite this, the town is not entirely devoid of life. Against all odds, a few individuals still reside here. These are solitary figures who adamantly refuse to abandon their homes during the mass evacuation. Initially numbering around 20, their ranks have since diminished to just a few. These residents have spent the majority of their lives in Centralia, and despite the constant peril of toxic fumes and the potential for sudden ground collapses, cannot envision their lives elsewhere. Most are elderly, accustomed to isolation and the challenges of living without essential infrastructure and municipal services. They rely on generators for electricity and regularly travel to neighboring communities to procure food and water. It is noteworthy that for the scant few who remain, the town has become an emblem of personal freedom and unwavering resilience. Officially, authorities have completely delisted Centralia from the registers of inhabited places, removing its postal code and road signage. Nonetheless, the remaining residents continue to assert their right to reside in their hometown. They have even pursued legal action, attempting to reinstate the town's official status, though without success thus far. Access to Centralia is currently possible, though authorities discourage it. While technically not closed to visitors, the territory is considered hazardous, and local officials actively strive to limit tourist influx through warning signs and occasional road closures. Nevertheless, this location remains highly sought after by tourists, historians, and enthusiasts of peculiar destinations. Centralia captivates with its enigmatic landscapes and its singular history. Many venture here to witness the smoking sinkholes firsthand, capture photographs of abandoned dwellings, and absorb the peculiar ambiance of a phantom city cloaked in smoke. The town takes on a particularly striking appearance during cold and damp weather, when the ground's exhalations mingle with the cool air, forming a low fog-like layer that drifts slowly over the streets and overgrown areas. In such moments, Centralia assumes an almost mystical quality, further intensifying the allure for tourists and photographers. It is imperative to acknowledge that visiting Centralia carries genuine risks. Toxic gases and ground collapses remain significant threats. Tourists venturing into the town must exercise extreme caution and vigilance, carefully minding their steps and refraining from approaching fissures and sinkholes too closely. Therefore, should you contemplate a visit, it is strongly advised to thoroughly review expert recommendations, utilize respiratory protection, wear footwear with sturdy soles, and bear in mind that you are doing so entirely at your own risk. It is unsurprising that such an unusual and unsettling place as Centralia has spawned numerous legends and captured the imagination of popular culture. Individuals who have visited the town or heard of it often create their own narratives, attempting to elucidate the mysterious phenomena occurring there. These accounts frequently transcend factual events, evolving into myths that further embellish the town's spectral aura. One of the most prevalent local legends posits that the subterranean fire in Centralia was not an accident. According to this narrative, authorities deliberately set fire to the town, either to gain control of the mines or to conceal clandestine criminal activities. While historical records and investigations conclusively demonstrate this version to be entirely unsubstantiated, the legend persists, fueling some individuals' distrust of the official account. Another widespread local legend is connected to the spirits of miners who perished in mining accidents in Centralia during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Residents have recounted tales of encountering peculiar figures dressed in antiquated attire and covered in soot and dust, appearing on the streets after the fire commenced, only to vanish without a trace. Eyewitnesses have claimed these encounters were consistently accompanied by disquieting sounds, resembling muffled pickaxe blows and distant voices, seemingly emanating from beneath the earth. Although no verifiable instances of ghostly apparitions have been documented, this legend maintains its popularity among tourists and local inhabitants. However, Centralia has achieved its most significant recognition and influence in popular culture through the mediums of film and video games. In the early 2000s, the Japanese company Konami developed the iconic game series Silent Hill. Despite the developers never officially confirming a connection to Centralia, numerous details within the game and its pervasive atmosphere bear such a striking resemblance to the American ghost town that fans of the series quickly drew a parallel between the two. This association gained particular traction following the release of the film Silent Hill in 2006, the director of which officially acknowledged being inspired by Centralia's narrative. In the film, viewers are presented with a town perpetually shrouded in fog and ash, characterized by deserted streets and derelict structures. The film's depiction of fog and falling ash is attributed to the underground fires occurring in the mines beneath the town. Furthermore, the film's plot suggests that the mine fire resulted from a curse inflicted upon the town due to tragic past events that its inhabitants attempted to conceal. While, in reality, Centralia is not blanketed in ash, nor does the smoke generate a dense, constant fog. The atmospheric similarities are undeniable. This artistic interpretation has further amplified public interest in the actual ghost town. The film and the games significantly boosted Centralia's appeal among aficionados of horror and mystical narratives. The town has become a pilgrimage site for fans eager to personally experience the ambiance that inspired their beloved works. Visitors frequently engage in themed photo shoots, record fan-made videos, and even organize gatherings for enthusiasts of the horror genre. Thus, Centralia has transformed from a town virtually erased from maps and gradually disappearing from the face of the earth into a seminal cultural phenomenon, widely recognized across the globe. It represents a unique instance where a genuine historical event, steeped in drama and tragedy, gradually evolves into a cultural phenomenon that extends far beyond its original historical context. From the narrative of Centralia, a town gradually vanishing under the relentless forces of fire and smoke, we shift our focus to an entirely different enigma. This is the story of a place that vanished within mere years, leaving behind only cryptic clues regarding the fate of its inhabitants. We are referring to Roanoke Island, a small territory off the coast of what is now North Carolina, which became the site of England's inaugural attempt at establishing a permanent colony in North America. In the latter half of the 16th century, England entered into a significant rivalry with other European powers, primarily Spain and France, in their pursuit of dominance over new territories in the Americas. One such territory that garnered the attention of the English was Roanoke Island, situated along the Atlantic seaboard. The English crown perceived this as an opportunity to expand its influence and secure control over new resources. The initial endeavor by the English to establish a foothold on the island took place in 1585. The expedition was organized by the renowned mariner and courtier to Queen Elizabeth I, Sir Walter Raleigh. The leadership of the nascent colony was entrusted to Ralph Lane. However, despite the high caliber of the organizers, the attempt to found a settlement proved exceptionally unsuccessful. Upon their arrival, the islanders encountered harsh living conditions, a scarcity of provisions, and challenging relations with the indigenous inhabitants, the Algonquian tribes. Initially, the indigenous people welcomed the English with amity and curiosity. They assisted the settlers, providing them with sustenance and imparting knowledge essential for survival in unfamiliar surroundings. However, over time, mutual trust eroded. The primary catalyst for the deterioration of relations was the colonists' imprudent policy. The English frequently exhibited a harsh demeanor and displayed a lack of respect for local customs and traditions. Furthermore, they did not consider it necessary to honor agreements made with the indigenous people, which understandably engendered their justifiable displeasure. A critical juncture was reached when Ralph Lane ordered the execution of a local chieftain named Wingina, whom he suspected of plotting an attack. The indigenous people interpreted this act as an overt act of aggression. The trust between the two parties completely disintegrated, leading to severe skirmishes and confrontations that resulted in casualties among both the indigenous population and the colonists. In the spring of 1586, the eminent English mariner, Sir Francis Drake, returning from raids on Spanish colonies in the Caribbean, arrived off the shores of Roanoke Island. Recognizing the colonists' dire predicament and assessing the threat posed by the indigenous people, Drake proposed evacuating all the settlers back to England. The colonists accepted the offer, departing the island. Shortly after Drake's departure, Sir Richard Grenville arrived on the island. Upon discovering the abandoned colony, he left 15 individuals behind to maintain the English presence. However, the fate of these 15 individuals also remains unknown. Despite the unsuccessful initial experience, English authorities did not abandon the concept of establishing a permanent colony. In the summer of 1587, they embarked on a second attempt. This time, a new group of over 100 settlers disembarked on the island. Among them were not only male explorers, but also women and children, signifying the seriousness of the English intentions to establish a lasting settlement. The leadership of this new expedition was conferred upon Governor John White, who had prior experience on the island during the preceding expedition. For an initial period, the colonists diligently endeavored to establish their lives in the new locale. They constructed modest dwellings, cleared land, and began cultivating small plots for planting. However, it soon became apparent that the resources brought from England were insufficient for sustainable existence on the island. There was a deficit of food, medicine, and tools. The situation was further exacerbated by the resurgence of strained relations with the indigenous tribes. The relationships were complicated, in part, by the history of prior conflict. The indigenous people still recalled the events associated with the first group of Englishmen and regarded the new settlers with suspicion and apprehension. Furthermore, issues and conflicts arose on the island concerning competition for limited resources. Although overt confrontations were avoided in the early stages of the second colony, an atmosphere of distrust and tension significantly complicated the settlers' lives. Under these circumstances, Governor John White made the decision to return to England to procure essential supplies, tools, and additional settlers for the island. He left his daughter Eleanor and his granddaughter Virginia Dare, the first English child born in North America, on the island, and then embarked on his return journey to England. His intention was to return within a few months, but circumstances intervened. At that time, England found itself embroiled in a major conflict with Spain, culminating in the invasion of the Spanish Armada. Due to the war, English authorities commandeered all available vessels for defense against the invasion, preventing White from promptly returning to the island. He was compelled to remain in England for several years. It was only after a period of 3 years in the summer of 1590 that he was finally able to set sail back to the island, harboring anxieties about the welfare of his loved ones and the remaining colonists. John White's return to Roanoke Island yielded an unexpected discovery, which has since become one of America's most profound historical mysteries. Upon his eventual return, John White anticipated finding his family and the other colonists awaiting aid from England. Instead, the island greeted him with an unnerving silence and emptiness. All the structures were intact, but the inhabitants were conspicuously absent. The dwellings were completely abandoned, yet there were no discernible signs of struggle, panic, or destruction that might suggest an attack by indigenous people or any other threat. The impression conveyed was that the colonists had departed the settlement calmly and in an organized manner, leaving behind no trace whatsoever. The sole clue left by the vanished colonists was an enigmatic inscription, meticulously carved into a wooden post situated at the entrance to the settlement. The message comprised a single inscription, Croatoan. Nearby on a tree, the letters Crow were carved, suggesting an unfinished attempt to continue the message. Governor White immediately recognized the name. Croatoan was the designation for a neighboring island inhabited by an indigenous tribe of the same name, with whom the English had previously maintained relatively amicable relations. Even before his departure, White had arranged with the colonists that in the event of danger or the need to evacuate the island, they were to leave a distinctive mark indicating their destination. Upon discovering the inscription, Governor White felt a measure of relief, theorizing that the colonists might have voluntarily and peacefully relocated to Croatoan Island, seeking refuge from famine or threats posed by less amicable native groups. However, he was unable to substantiate this hypothesis. When White attempted to set sail for Croatoan Island, a severe storm erupted, damaging the ships and forcing the expedition to return to England. Thus, circumstances once again thwarted White's efforts to ascertain the fate of his daughter, granddaughter, and the other missing settlers. In the ensuing years, English explorers and mariners endeavored to investigate Creathon Island. But owing to challenging weather patterns and treacherous coastal waters, a comprehensive survey could not be completed. Some expeditions did manage to make landfall. Nevertheless, they found no definitive traces of the English colonists' presence. Even the indigenous tribes with whom the English established contact during later expeditions could not provide conclusive explanations for the disappearances. The native peoples offered rather vague accounts. Some spoke of encountering fair-skinned individuals living among the local populations. Others recounted instances of conflict and raids. However, all these reports were too indistinct and contradictory to permit any firm conclusions. Subsequently, English expeditions repeatedly surveyed the vicinity of Roanoke Island and surrounding territories, yet they failed to locate either the colonists themselves or any compelling evidence of their presence on adjacent islands. This complete and sudden vanishing of over 100 individuals has spawned a multitude of hypotheses, ranging from the plausible to the fanciful. One of the most prevalent and likely theories posits that the colonists voluntarily assimilated with the friendly Croatoan tribe. According to this account, the English gradually integrated with the indigenous populace, adopting their way of life, culture, and customs, and over several generations, effectively dissolved into the native population. Archaeologists and historians have unearthed indirect corroboration for this theory, such as European artifacts and adornments found in the settlements of indigenous tribes. However, direct and irrefutable proof has remained elusive. A second popular hypothesis asserts that the colonists fell victim to attacks by less amicable Indian tribes. Conflicts and hostile interactions with the local inhabitants could have precipitated raids, resulting in the colonists' demise or capture. The absence of any clear signs of violence or battle discovered at the settlement, however, argues against this theory. Yet another hypothesis links the settlers' disappearance to an attempt to relocate further inland, where conditions for agriculture and habitation might have seemed more favorable. It is quite possible that the colonists decided to abandon the island in search of a more secure location, and may have perished en route from starvation, illness, or skirmishes with other native tribes. However, this hypothesis also remains unsubstantiated, as no compelling archaeological evidence of such a migration has been found. Fanciful theories have also emerged. In folklore and literature, hypotheses concerning supernatural phenomena, alien abductions of settlers, or their vanishing due to mystical occurrences are frequently cited. While such versions lack any scientific basis, they have contributed to the mystique and popularity of the Roanoke narrative among a wider audience. Despite extensive research, historical theories, and archaeological investigations, there is still no definitive answer to the question of precisely where the inhabitants of the first British colony in North America disappeared. We now transport ourselves forward several centuries to examine a starkly different example of a city compelled to become deserted overnight. On this occasion, the cause was the most significant man-made disaster in human history, permanently altering the destinies of tens of thousands of people. We are referring to the city of Pripyat, which became an emblem of the atomic age's repercussions. The city was established on February 4th, 1970, specifically for the workforce of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, one of the Soviet Union's most ambitious and significant undertakings in the realm of peaceful atomic energy. The city was situated a mere 3 kilometers from the plant itself and served as an exemplary Soviet settlement with ideal living conditions. Within a few years of its founding, Pripyat transformed from a modest workers' settlement into a rapidly developing city, home to over 47,000 inhabitants by the mid-1980s. Architects and urban planners of the Soviet Union invested considerable effort to make Pripyat as convenient and comfortable as possible for its citizens. The city was conceived as a manifestation of the Soviet ideal: broad avenues with well-maintained courtyards, modern multi-story buildings with well-appointed apartments, centralized heating, water supply, and a well-developed infrastructure characterized the urban landscape. The high standard of social life was particularly emphasized. Residents enjoyed access to superior medical care, contemporary educational institutions, and athletic facilities. A distinct atmosphere of comfort and optimism was cultivated, underscoring the ideals and aspirations of the Soviet system. The primary demographic of Pripyat consisted of young families, engineers, scientists, and other specialists who had relocated from all corners of the Soviet Union to work at the nuclear power station. The facility was not only considered a crucial energy project for the nation, but also a prestigious place of employment, attracting highly skilled personnel. The city exuded an air of stability and confidence in the future. However, this very stability was abruptly shattered on the night of April 26, 1986, when a catastrophic accident occurred at the 4th power unit of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. During a routine safety system test, plant personnel committed several critical errors. Initially, the reactor's power output was reduced too drastically, and then, during an attempt to restore it, a rapid surge occurred, leading to the overheating of nuclear fuel. Consequently, the pressure within the reactor escalated sharply, culminating in an explosion that completely destroyed the reactor unit. The aftermath was truly devastating. A colossal quantity of radioactive substances was released into the atmosphere, dispersing over thousands of kilometers and impacting not only the Soviet Union, but also territories across Europe. In the initial hours following the accident, specialists and plant management underestimated the scale of the event, attempting to conceal or minimize information about what had transpired. This led to delayed rescue operations and measures to protect the population from radiation. Despite this, firefighters and plant personnel desperately fought to extinguish the fires at the power units, lacking adequate protective gear. Many of them received fatal doses of radiation, becoming the initial victims of the catastrophe. Furthermore, in the first few days after the explosion, thousands of individuals, including residents of Pripyat and nearby areas, were exposed to severe radioactive contamination. The consequences of this exposure manifested gradually, triggering acute and chronic illnesses, including radiation sickness, cancers, and genetic abnormalities. The accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant subsequently resulted in profound medical and ecological ramifications, the effects of which are still felt today. Thus, in mere hours, one of the Soviet Union's most advanced and comfortable cities faced the most significant nuclear catastrophe in human history. The evacuation of Pripyat commenced 36 hours after the disaster on April 27, 1986. Authorities made the decision to immediately remove the city's inhabitants. However, residents were informed that this was a temporary measure and that they would return home in just a few days. At that moment, no one could have foreseen that their homes and apartments would remain empty forever. The evacuation proceeded in an orderly and swift manner. Over 1,000 buses were mobilized to transport the entire population of more than 47,000 people out of the city within a few hours. Residents were given only a few hours to pack, instructed to take only their documents, money, and a minimal amount of personal belongings. People departed their apartments, leaving behind virtually everything they had accumulated over years of life in the city. As a result, Pripyat remains frozen in a state of eerie, surreal desolation, as if the city suddenly paused in the midst of its ordinary existence. Today, the atmosphere of Pripyat presents a striking yet unsettling panorama. Over nearly 40 years without inhabitants, the city has undergone a complete transformation. Abandoned buildings are slowly decaying, their windows shattered by time and weather, and their walls are marked by cracks and peeling paint. The once broad, well-kept streets and avenues have become almost unrecognizable, reclaimed by lush vegetation. Trees, shrubs, and grass have breached the asphalt, and a veritable forest now stands amidst the former city thoroughfares. The abandoned kindergartens and schools are particularly evocative, where toys are still scattered across floors. Dust-covered textbooks rest on desks, and children's drawings gradually fade on the walls, creating the illusion that the children have only just stepped out for a break and will soon return to their classrooms. The residential buildings offer an equally compelling ambiance. Old televisions stand in apartments, dishes remain in kitchens, and books and magazines, which residents either couldn't or chose not to take, lie on the floors. One of Pripyat's most iconic and recognizable landmarks is its amusement park, the opening of which was scheduled for May 1st, 1986, but never took place. The rides never hosted their first visitors. Particularly symbolic is the towering Ferris wheel, its static cabins still visible above the trees and overgrown grass. It has become a haunting yet captivating monument to the Soviet era and the tragedy that irrevocably altered the city's fate. Despite the passage of nearly 4 decades since the accident, the radiation levels in Pripyat remain significantly above natural background radiation. In certain areas of the city, they exceed normal levels by tens or even hundreds of times. Particularly dangerous are specific locations known as hotspots, where radiation levels persist at extremely high concentrations. However, In most parts of the city, radiation no longer poses an acute threat for brief visits. Excursion tours are regularly organized under the guidance of professional escorts and with the use of dosimeters. Thousands of tourists from around the globe visit annually to witness firsthand this unique ghost city, remarkable for its atmosphere and history. A peculiar phenomenon of Pripyat are the so-called red forests. These are zones surrounding the city where pine trees acquired a reddish-brown hue due to radiation exposure. In the initial weeks following the catastrophe, trees in these areas perished en masse, having absorbed critical doses of radiation. The forest became a symbol of the exclusion zone, and the red forest territory evolved into one of the most radioactive and restricted areas around Pripyat. Access remains prohibited even now, as radiation levels there continue to be hazardous to human life. Simultaneously, decades after the human evacuation, nature in the vicinity of Pripyat and Chernobyl has begun a vigorous recovery. Due to the absence of human activity within the exclusion zone, a significant number of animals and birds, rarely encountered here before, have reappeared. Scientists have documented the presence of bears and lynx, the return of rare species listed in the Red Book, such as the black stork, white-tailed eagle, and golden eagle, has been remarkable. The exclusion zone has unexpectedly transformed into a distinctive nature preserve. Although the animals, of course, also suffer from radiation exposure, leading to alterations in their health and genetics. As time progresses, nature increasingly reclaims its territory, gradually engulfing the city once lauded as a paragon of comfort and order. Today, Pripyat remains one of the most visited ghost cities worldwide. People come here to witness firsthand the unique spectacle of nature steadily erasing traces of human activity, transforming the urban infrastructure into a wild and unusual landscape filled with silence and memories of events that forever changed the lives of tens of thousands. Following the chillingly captivating atmosphere of contemporary Pripyat, we will journey to another continent and an entirely different natural environment to encounter yet another striking instance of how a flourishing city can swiftly transform into a phantom. This time, we head to the arid expanse of Africa to explore Kolmanskop, a town born and raised amidst a desolate desert, its existence propelled by the diamond rush of the early 20th century. Kolmanskop's narrative commenced in 1908, during a period when the territory of present-day Namibia was under German dominion, known as German Southwest Africa. It was in this year that a humble laborer named Zacharias Lewala, working on the construction of a railway near the Atlantic coast, happened upon a gleaming stone on the sand, which proved to be a diamond. News of this discovery swiftly circulated throughout the colony and soon reached Europe, igniting immense excitement. Hundreds and thousands of adventurers, prospectors, and dreamers from all over Germany and other parts of Europe began arriving in these harsh yet potentially prosperous lands. The German colonial authorities quickly recognized the significance of this event and resolved to strictly regulate diamond extraction and export. A guarded zone was immediately established around the discovery site, where access and gem extraction were rigorously controlled. Shortly thereafter, a small camp emerged at this location, christened Kolmanskop, in honor of the explorer and trader Johnny Coleman, whose expedition had once become stranded in the local sands. serving as a landmark for prospectors passing through these areas. Unlike many other prospecting towns that arose from haphazard and spontaneous construction, Kolmunskop was initially designed and established with the grandeur and comfort characteristic of European standards of the time. German architects and engineers succeeded in building not merely temporary shelters for the prospectors, but a fully realized European town in the heart of a waterless desert. Residences for the affluent townsfolk were spacious, two-story structures featuring wide verandas, balconies, and large windows designed to provide coolness during hot days. The homes of workers and employees were simpler, but equally comfortable and well-appointed, equipped with all necessary amenities. Life in Kolmunskop developed at an astonishing pace. Within a few years of its establishment, the town boasted its own power plant, supplying electricity to all homes and streets. A modern hospital was erected, outfitted with the latest medical equipment, and one of Africa's first X-ray machines, which, incidentally, was used not only for medical purposes, but also to detect diamonds concealed by workers within their clothing and personal effects. The prosperity of Kolmunskop was particularly evident in its cultural and social life. Numerous shops operated in the town, offering the most expensive and rare goods imported from Europe, from fine wines and cigars to fashionable clothing and furniture. In the evenings, wealthy residents frequented the opulent casino and the magnificent theater constructed in the city's core. The theater hosted troupes and renowned performers who traveled specifically for engagements from Germany and other European nations. Local residents regularly organized balls, banquets, and musical evenings, imbuing this desert town with the ambiance of a European resort nestled somewhere in Central Europe, rather than amidst the African sand dunes. The town's infrastructure was impressive, even by the standards of developed European cities of that era. The continent's first tramway line operated in the town, connecting residential sectors and industrial areas, facilitating the transportation of both goods and passengers. Water was conveyed through long, specialized pipes from distant sources, allowing residents to enjoy baths and even cultivate small gardens near their homes. Some affluent residents specifically imported fertile soil from afar, establishing gardens and flower beds directly amidst the desert, creating an unusual and picturesque contrast with the surrounding barren landscape. Kolmunskop was a prosperous and well-provisioned settlement, a true testament to wealth, luxury, and progress that emerged in one of the planet's most inhospitable corners. It seemed nothing could impede its prosperity. However, fate decreed otherwise. Gradually, despite all its affluence and opulence, Kolmunskop found itself destined for a slow decline. By the early 1920s, it became evident that the diamond deposits near the town were steadily depleting. If previously precious stones were practically lying on the surface of the sand and easily found even without great effort, then with the passage of years, mining had to be conducted deeper, significantly complicating and increasing the cost of the process. The ultimate blow to Kolmunskop's destiny was the discovery of new, richer diamond fields further south, near the Orange River, closer to the border with present-day South Africa. These new deposits were not only more abundant and easier to exploit, but also allowed for mining under more comfortable conditions. Consequently, most residents, drawn by new opportunities and more favorable working conditions, began to abandon Kolmunskop. gradually relocating to other settlements. Over the subsequent decades, the exodus of inhabitants intensified. Those who departed progressively took their belongings with them or sold them, leaving homes empty and desolate. The last families departed the town in the mid-20th century, and Kolmanskop soon became deserted. The once luxurious and thriving city transformed into a phantom amidst the desert sands. After the departure of the inhabitants, the desert rapidly began to reclaim the territories formerly occupied by the town. Persistent dry winds in the Namib began to fill the streets and courtyards, gradually covering the houses with a layer of fine, heavy sand. Initially, the sand penetrated only the lower floors and basements of the buildings, but over time, it began to rise higher and higher, completely filling the interiors. The desert seemed inexorably to erase the traces of human presence, gradually engulfing the entire town. Today, Kolmanskop presents a striking and atmospheric tableau, simultaneously eerie and captivating. Most buildings are still intact, but they now appear entirely different from their heydays. Powerful sand drifts are gradually forcing open doors and windows, seeping into rooms, corridors, and stairwells in soft waves. The once grand halls of the theater, casino, and spacious mansions are now filled with deep sand drifts, as if giant dunes are slowly flowing from room to room, claiming ever more space. Strolling through the streets of present-day Kolmanskop, it is difficult to shake the feeling of unreality. In some interiors, the sand reaches almost to the ceiling, leaving only narrow passages for movement. Sunlight streams through broken windows and partially ruined roofs, casting unusual shadows on the sand and creating a surreal interplay of light and shade. The colors of the walls and wallpaper, though faded by time and sun, still retain traces of their former beauty and splendor. In certain locations, vestiges of elegant wooden staircases, exquisite decorative accents, and remnants of antique furnishings can still be observed, preserved from eras of past affluence. A gentle wind, traversing the deserted thoroughfares, conjures uncanny sounds, akin to a hushed whisper, amplifying the spectral aura of the locale. Presently, Kolmanskop garners substantial acclaim from globe-trotting tourists and photographers drawn to its allure. The ambience of this abandoned urban expanse, gradually and inevitably enveloped by the sandy desert, leaves an indelible mark. These derelict edifices and the slow-shifting dunes serve as poignant reminders of nature's capacity to reclaim dominion over what humanity once deemed its own. We shall now journey to another continent, specifically Italy, to explore a remarkable medieval settlement perched atop a scenic hill. Known as Craco, the narrative of this place vividly illustrates how a once thriving municipality, steeped in centuries of tradition, can abruptly fall silent, transforming into a ghostly echo of its former self. Craco is situated in the southernmost reaches of Italy, within the picturesque and undulating region of Basilicata. The town's genesis traces back to the 6th century CE, when its inhabitants, seeking refuge from incursions by Saracens and other invaders, opted to establish their community on a lofty, almost impregnable promontory, approximately 400 meters in elevation. This strategic positioning afforded inherent defensive advantages, enabling residents to detect approaching adversaries from afar, thereby granting them a crucial strategic edge. During the medieval epoch, Krakow teemed with vitality and activity, flourishing through commerce and agriculture, benefiting from the fertile plains at the hill's base Its populace successfully cultivated grains, grapes, and olives. The wines produced here, along with their high-quality olive oil, were widely recognized and sought after across numerous Italian cities. Beyond agrarian pursuits, the town was home to a thriving array of artisanal crafts, including pottery, smithing, weaving, and leatherworking establishments. Local artisans garnered renown throughout the region for their superior creations, which attracted merchants from neighboring territories. Krakov's thoroughfares were bustling and clamorous, alive with the voices of citizens, traders, and craftspeople. Narrow, winding stone lanes meandered between residences, ascending and descending the hillside. Dwellings, arranged in terraced fashion one above another, contributed to the town's distinctive architectural character. The walls of these houses were constructed from pale stone, their roofs crowned with traditional terracotta tiles, and their windows adorned with shutters and ornamental wrought iron grills. The principal piazza served as the town's vibrant nucleus, a regular gathering place for residents and visitors engaged in trade and social interaction. Grand fairs, drawing people from all surrounding areas, were frequently held here. Merchants showcased an eclectic assortment of wares, ranging from exotic spices and fine textiles to intricate jewelry and ceramic artistry. Not far from the square stood the Church of San Nicola, erected in the 10th century and regarded as the spiritual heart of the community. Its ancient bells faithfully announced holidays, religious services, and significant happenings. Another pivotal architectural feature of Krakow was the Norman castle, strategically positioned at the hill's highest point. This fortification served not only defensive purposes, but also as the residence of local dignitaries, symbolizing the town's power and prosperity. Adjacent to the castle, a tall tower commanded a breathtaking panorama of the entire district, providing a vantage point from which residents could effectively monitor potential threats. Krakow also boasted rich cultural traditions. The town hosted modest educational institutions where children could receive basic instruction. Periodically, traveling musicians, theatrical troupes, and performers would visit, staging entertainments in the streets and public spaces. Festivals, harvest celebrations, religious processions, and carnivals, all accompanied by music, dancing, and diverse culinary offerings, formed an integral part of community life. The inhabitants of Krakow took pride in their heritage and diligently preserved their customs, passing them down through generations. It seemed as though nothing could impede the progress and prosperity of this ancient settlement, securely anchored to its picturesque elevation. However, destiny intervened, and the town, which had experienced centuries of vibrant and eventful existence, found itself on the precipice of abrupt transformations that would irrevocably alter its trajectory. Notwithstanding the enduring stability, prosperity, and security that Krakow had long been celebrated for, its elevated position, which had served as its protection for so long, ultimately precipitated a series of calamitous events, compelling its populace to abandon their homes. The initial indicators of severe challenges emerged as early as the late 10th century, when in the year 1892, the town endured a substantial landslide. This event inflicted damage upon a considerable portion of the dwellings, necessitating the relocation of several families further down the hillside. Nevertheless, the populace held on to the belief that this was an isolated incident and continued their daily routines. The situation, however, steadily deteriorated. The soil, predominantly composed of soft clay and limestone, became increasingly unstable. The construction of a modern water supply system in the first half of the 20th century significantly exacerbated the problem. Due to inadequate pipe sealing, water persistently seeped into the ground, eroding the clay and gradually undermining the foundations of the structures. A major disaster struck in 1963 when Krakow was once again struck by a widespread landslide. The clay embankment, saturated by water from the malfunctioning water system, began to slide downwards, demolishing homes and streets. The resulting damage was so extensive that authorities mandated the immediate evacuation of residents. Approximately 1,800 individuals departed from Old Krakow and resettled in a new village, Krakupiskera, situated in a secure area within the valley. The precarious situation was further aggravated by the region's characteristic frequent and torrential rainfall. In 1972, heavy downpours triggered additional landslides, irrevocably extinguishing the inhabitants' hopes of returning to their ancestral homes. The final blow came with the 1980 earthquake, which inflicted further devastation upon the town, definitively confirming the impossibility of its restoration. Today, the atmosphere of abandoned Krakow is both awe-inspiring and unsettling. The stone pathways, once alive with human activity, now lie in silence. Nearly every building stands in a state of partial ruin, gradually succumbing to the erosive forces of wind and rain. Vegetation sprouts through window frames devoid of glass, and inner courtyards are carpeted with dense thickets of shrubs and grasses. The Church of San Nicola, despite sustaining considerable damage, still retains remnants of its former grandeur. Ancient frescoes, stone arches, and decorative elements evoke the town's rich past. The imposing Norman castle and its accompanying tower, situated at the apex of the hill, continue to overlook the surrounding landscape, as if still guarding the forsaken settlement. Thanks to its distinctive ambiance, Krakow has become a favored setting for cinematic productions. Scenes from acclaimed films such as Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ and the James Bond installment Quantum of Solace were filmed here. In the year 2010, the town was designated a World Monument Watch Site, underscoring its significance as a cultural and historical landmark. Krakow is currently open to tourists and travelers who come to immerse themselves in the unique atmosphere of a medieval town left to the mercy of nature and time. Its silent stone alleys and crumbling edifices stand as a stark reminder of how swiftly elemental forces can reshape the destiny of even the most prosperous communities. From the medieval allure of Italy's Krakow, we shall travel far to the east to investigate a markedly different kind of ghost town. Our destination this time is a small island off the coast of Japan, known as Hashima, or more commonly by the Japanese as Gunkanjima, which literally translates to Battleship Island. This peculiar appellation stems from its distinctive appearance. When viewed from the sea, its silhouette resembles a colossal warship at rest upon the waves. Hashima is located approximately 15 kilometers from the Nagasaki coastline and encompasses an area of mere 6 hectares. Initially, the island was simply a minor rocky outcrop, largely unsuitable for habitation or industry. Its present form is the result of extensive engineering endeavors. Concrete walls and reinforcements were constructed around the rock's perimeter, and the surrounding space was progressively filled with reclaimed land. Consequently, a significant portion of the island's territory was artificially created, allowing for the erection of residential buildings, mining shafts, and other essential structures. Hashima's developmental trajectory is intrinsically linked to Japan's industrial advancement. In the early 19th century, substantial deposits of high-grade coal were discovered here, sparking the interest of Japanese industrialists. By the century's end, the island had come under the control of the Mitsubishi Company, which commenced vigorous coal extraction and infrastructure development. Soon thereafter, Hashima Island emerged as a pivotal center for coal mining in the region, precipitating a rapid population surge. By the mid-20th century, at the zenith of its prosperity, the island was densely populated with residential blocks, schools, hospitals, a cinema, and dining establishments. Despite extremely confined confines, a complete urban complex capable of accommodating up to 5,000 inhabitants was successfully established. This rendered Hashima one of the most densely populated locations on Earth, when measured by population density per square kilometer. Life on the island was singular, yet distinctly peculiar. Residents resided in compact apartments within multi-story concrete structures erected in close proximity. Green spaces and open areas were virtually non-existent, and the narrow alleys winding between the buildings resembled labyrinthine passages, challenging to navigate without prior knowledge of the routes. The constant hum of operational mines and industrial machinery pervaded the island, contributing to a unique industrial city atmosphere. However, Hashima's economic prosperity was short-lived. By the 1960s, the Japanese economy began a pronounced shift from coal to oil as a more economical and convenient energy source. This triggered a sharp decline in coal demand, directly impacting the island's mineral extraction operations. Furthermore, the coal reserves gradually dwindled, making the exploitation of the deposits increasingly less profitable. By the early 1970s, it became evident that maintaining the mines and the town on the island was economically unviable. In 1974, Mitsubishi made the definitive decision to close the mines and evacuate the residents. This directive was executed swiftly and without delay. Within mere weeks, inhabitants vacated their homes, taking with them only essential belongings and leaving behind an entire city with a fully functional infrastructure. Hashima was suddenly deserted, becoming a striking illustration of how rapid industrial booms can give way to decline, leaving behind only emptiness and silence. The island of Hashima today presents a surreal, futuristic panorama, as if extracted from the pages of a post-apocalyptic novel. Over time, the concrete facades of residential and industrial buildings have developed cracks, their exteriors darkened and eroded by the corrosive effects of salty sea air and the harsh climate. Metallic structures have progressively rusted and disintegrated, transforming into peculiar artistic installations crafted by nature itself. The multi-story residential complexes, once teeming with life and echoing with the voices of thousands of inhabitants, now loom over the island like silent sentinels of a forgotten past. The windows of most apartments have long been stripped of their panes, and doors have either warped or detached entirely, revealing interior spaces where personal effects, antique household items, and even toys discarded during the hasty evacuation can still be found. In the absence of human upkeep and constant maintenance, the island began to rapidly succumb to vegetation. Despite the austere conditions and a near complete lack of soil, plants and small shrubs have taken root on the concrete rooftops and within the fissures of the walls, lending the island an uncanny, almost fantastical appearance, while tree roots gradually undermine the concrete foundations of the buildings. Hashima has become a significant draw for tourists, photographers, and enthusiasts of the mystical from across the globe. An aura of legend and mystery surrounds the island, stemming not only from its enigmatic appearance, but also from the narrative of its former inhabitants. One prevalent legend claims that inexplicable occurrences began to manifest on the island after its abandonment. Witnesses report hearing strange noises, disembodied voices, and glimpsing spectral figures within the derelict structures. While many of these accounts are undoubtedly fueled by imagination, intensified by the pervasive atmosphere of desolation, they nonetheless enhance Hashima's appeal for those who are drawn to mysterious and enigmatic locales. The island's unusual, almost surreal visage has captured the attention of numerous artists, writers, and filmmakers. Hashima is now officially inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List and is accessible only through specially organized tours, as many sections of the island remain hazardous due to potential structural collapses. Finally, we journey to France to uncover the story of a town perpetually frozen on a single tragic day. This narrative stands in stark contrast to the other abandoned sites we have discussed. The town of Oradour-sur-Glane was not deserted due to natural calamities, economic downturns, or resource depletion. Its desolation was the direct consequence of the horrific brutality of war. Prior to the devastating events, Oradour-sur-Glane was a quintessential French hamlet nestled in the picturesque Limousin region. It was a tranquil provincial town where life proceeded at an unhurried and measured pace. By the mid-20th century, its population numbered slightly over 600 residents. They were primarily engaged in agriculture, viticulture, artisanal trades, small-scale commerce, and lived a serene existence far removed from the direct impact of major conflict and wartime peril. The town was renowned for its charming lanes, meticulously maintained stone dwellings, quaint family-run cafes, bakeries, and vibrant gardens, and its inhabitants were celebrated for their hospitality and cordiality. However, this tranquility was brutally shattered on the 10th of June, 1944, mere days after the Allied landings in Normandy. Oradour-sur-Glane found itself in the path of retreating and regrouping German forces, including the infamous SS Panzer Division, Das Reich. Midday saw detachments of German soldiers enter the town, ordering all residents to immediately assemble in the central square for identity verification and a census. None of the local populace could have anticipated that this marked the prelude to a horrific tragedy. Shortly thereafter, women and children were separated from the men and confined within the local church. The men, divided into several groups, were escorted to barns and granaries situated on the town's outskirts. Without any explanation, German soldiers opened fire upon them with machine guns and rifles. Only a handful of men miraculously survived by feigning death beneath the bodies of their fallen comrades. Subsequently, the German soldiers returned to the church, where the women and children were held captive, and set it ablaze. As the desperate occupants attempted to escape the engulfed structure, they were met with gunfire. not a single individual within the church managed to survive. In the aftermath of this atrocity, 642 people perished, including 205 women and 247 children. The precise reason why German troops singled out this peaceful village for such a savage reprisal remains obscure. Historians have posited theories related to the presence of French resistance activities or an attempt to intimidate the local population in anticipation of the advancing Allied forces. Nevertheless, any effort to rationally explain such inhuman barbarity fails to fully encompass the magnitude of this tragedy. The residents of Oradour-sur-Glane posed no threat to the German army. Despite this, their peaceful lives were extinguished within a single day. Immediately following the mass executions, German soldiers systematically began destroying and setting fire to homes, shops, and cafes, transforming the once vibrant and tranquil town into a desolate ruin. Almost the entire village was engulfed in flames, reduced to scorched, deserted rubble within mere hours. French authorities made the deliberate decision never to rebuild Oradour-sur-Glane, consciously preserving it in the exact state it was found after the tragic events of June 10, 1944. This decision was not uncomplicated or without debate, yet it carried profound symbolic significance. Reconstructing the town after such an immense tragedy would have implied erasing the very memory of the perpetrated atrocities, akin to attempting to forget what had transpired. Instead, it was resolved to maintain the ruins as an enduring testament for future generations to the cost of war, hatred, and human cruelty. Today, the town stands as a place of solemn remembrance and profound quietude, imbued with deep pathos and dignity. The atmosphere of the town leaves an indelible impression on all who visit. An absolute silence prevails, broken only by the soft sounds of visitors' footsteps as they tread carefully and deliberately along the cobblestone paths. The town's streets appear virtually as they did on the day life ceased here. Along the roadsides, the charred skeletons of vehicles, rusted bicycles, and other everyday objects remain, left precisely where the tragedy overtook them. The semi-demolished stone houses, marked by black soot stains and featuring empty, gaping windows, seem to silently observe passers-by, as if recounting their tragic tale. Many homes still bear plaques, bearing the names of those who resided there and perished on that dreadful day. These simple details lend a personal and poignant dimension to the tragedy, allowing visitors to grasp the scale of the loss that occurred here. The local church, whose walls partially survived and still stand, leaves a particularly moving impact. Its desolate interior, with blackened walls and a partially ruined altar, has become a symbol of wartime horrors and the grief that envelops every visitor. Upon entering Oradour-sur-Glane, individuals instinctively moderate their pace and lower their voices, as if apprehensive of disturbing the memory of the departed inhabitants. French authorities actively maintain the town in its current state, preventing time from completely erasing the scars of the tragedy, while ensuring visitor safety. The town has been transformed into an open-air museum, attracting thousands of visitors annually from across the globe, who come to witness firsthand this silent testament to the fragility of peace and the paramount importance of preserving historical memory to prevent the recurrence of such events. Our journey through these spectral settlements concludes. Today we have explored vastly different locales, situated on diverse continents and bound by disparate destinies. Yet, they are united by a common characteristic. Once these places pulsed with life, resonated with human voices, and bustled with activity. Today, these towns stand deserted, transformed into serene, silent monuments. What lessons do these abandoned and forgotten places offer us? Foremost, they remind us of the precariousness and transience of human existence. We often perceive our daily routines as immutable and eternal, but the events we have discussed today demonstrate how suddenly and irreversibly our familiar world can be altered. This compels us to contemplate the profound significance of valuing the present moment, cherishing those close to us, and internalizing the lessons of the past to avoid repeating tragic mistakes. Each of these towns serves as a silent reminder of the consequences of human cruelty, negligence, or simply the unforgiving force of nature. Within these tranquil and hushed environments, time itself appears to have paused, intent on imparting stories that we are obligated to comprehend. Thank you for embarking on this exploration with me. I hope it has been both engaging and enlightening. Good night and pleasant dreams.